Hi, Will Patterson, living in Louisville. Today we're going to discuss buyer's seller agreement. This is specifically for the buyer side of the portion of a contract, which has not always been used in the past by many agents, but with some changes in the upcoming commission structures and differences that are going to be happening with most MLS systems. This is probably going to be a required form going forward with most brokerages. So let's get into this topic and get more in depth and give you some insight on what this form actually entails. Okay, so this is a particular agreement that's done with the Greater Louisville Association of Realtors. It's called the Exclusive Buyer Agency Contract. It is a legal binding contract governed by the laws of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Goes through all the normal verbiage that would be in a contract here at this top. There is no rescission period following the signing of a contract, and so on and so on. So let's get down into the nitty-gritty of this particular contract. Basically what this says is the buyer leasee shall hereinafter be referred to as buyer, listing brokerage sellers lessees shall hereinafter be referred to as the seller. So that's just basically selling. This is the buyer's contract, and then whenever you list a house, there's a seller's contract. The purpose of this agreement is a contract to enter into consideration of a brokerage company's agreement to work, to find, and produce the real property for a buyer to purchase or lease. So what that's basically saying, it's saying that I'm going to be your agent for the purchase or lease of a property. This contract is binding upon mutual acceptance, is made between whoever's names are in these particular boxes, which is the buyer. I'm with Aspire Real Estate Group, so that would be the brokerage, and engage in exclusive buyer brokerages for the purpose set forth with herein. So that just basically tells who the agreement is between. And let's move on down here. So the contract terms, these are basically, this can be anything that you negotiate with a buyer's agent, such as myself or anyone else. It can be a specific time frame here. I just put these dates in here as an example. Some people do 1 month, some people do 3 months, some people do 4, 5, 6, however long, could be up to a year or more, depending upon how long it thinks you might be wanting to look for a particular home or house or something to lease. So it goes over the terms of the time frame. If this contract expires while the buyer is party to the purchase of a contract or lease agreement and represented by the buyer's brokerage, as indicated in the contract, the term shall automatically extend to the sale is closed, the lease is ratified, or the purchase contract or lease agreement is terminated. So that also means that you can be terminated at any given time. It's not something that's obligated. There is a carryover clause, gives so many months from the time that this ends, which I've got on here is December 25th of this year. If you go out and buy something within a 3-month period of December 25th, there are some aspects that could entice me to be able to have a portion of a commission as well. So basically this is just saying after it's expired, the contract with the seller who has been introduced to the buyer directly or indirectly during the term hereof as extended by the buyer agrees to pay the compensation set forth below. This carryover clause shall not apply to the buyer as subject to an exclusive buyer agency contract other than a licensed real estate broker at the time of such contract. So just to go back over that again, if you go out and buy something from a seller that I've introduced you to, there might be an obligation there. Basically what that particular clause is stating. So we go down here into duties. The buyer's brokerage duties, the term, the contracts shall promote interest of the buyer, perform the terms of the contract, provide necessary guidance to complete the real estate transaction pertaining to the buyer's purchase lease of property, and adhere to the terms and the requirements of a guide to agency relationships. That is another form that basically tells you that I'm representing Aspire Real Estate as a buyer's agent for you. Buyer's duties during the term of this contract, buyer cooperate with the buyer's brokerage and acquisition of property by forming the terms of this contract, working exclusively with the buyer's brokerage regarding showings, offerings, negotiation, contracts, closings during the term of the contract, and conduct all communications through the buyer's brokerage for the listed and unlisted properties. So basically, everything that goes on once you are in conjunction with this is through me as your buyer's agent, and I work with Aspire Realty, and that would be the brokerage. As we continue on down, we go through the compensation, commission fee structures. No standard commission. The buyers acknowledge that the broker's commissions and fees are not standards, are not set by law, and are fully negotiable. This contract includes compensation for the buyer's brokerage service to be paid by the buyer to the buyer's brokerage as outlined below. So anything in regards to compensation is negotiable, but my standard fee for myself, for my services, is 3%. So if I put in there for the purchase contract or a lease agreement, which is 5%, that would be my standard rate. That rate is negotiable based upon our conclusion of meeting, discussing, and coming to an agreement. I could also do a flat fee, which is also negotiable based upon what we're thinking a potential sale could be. So then it might be a little bit less and maybe a little bit more. It just depends upon what the actual dollar amount is. Then there's another aspect where we could put in something that is completely different from either one of those, and that could be underneath the other aspect. Lease agreements are all the same, but this is where it's basically saying that once we get underneath the contract, my total compensation is 3%, and as we move down a little bit further here in this particular agreement, it shows the seller's compensation offer. So this is where it gets in to the differences. If a seller has a house and they're listed their house, and it states that, as it currently states, that the commission is 3% towards the buyer's agent, that means that the seller is offering 3% for their seller agent to find somebody to help buy the house. If that is good, then this 3% up here is virtually non-existent, because the seller is going to offer that 3% as my commission. Again, all that is negotiable on the seller side, so they might only offer 2.5%. If that's the case, then because of my fee being 3%, that means the buyer would need to pay that additional 0.5%. If it's 2% or 1.7%, whatever the seller is offering, between what I require from my perspective, which is 3% unless otherwise negotiated, and what the seller is doing unless otherwise negotiated, would be the total of everything that would be from that perspective. So if I negotiate a 2% and they're offering a 2%, there is no furthermore. If they're offering a 1%, but I've negotiated 2%, that means that the buyer would pay an additional 1%. So all these commissions, everything is negotiable. These buttons right here, or check boxes here rather, just basically state this one is the commission where nobody's going to pay. This one down here, the fee is not in line with what we have negotiated or required based upon my 3% fee. And all of these different aspects are done in regards to what we've already talked about in the beginning before we've ever purchased anything. So this basically just goes through all the different commission structure fees and how everything can be negotiated. Nothing is set in stone. And just to kind of go through this real quick, cooperating commission fees offered equal to the compensation. That would be something that my fee's 3% and they're offering 3%, then we check that box. If cooperating commission fee is offered greater than the compensation, then we check this, and then whether it's paid by the buyer, it's credited to the buyer or otherwise. And then lastly, cooperation commission fees offered less than compensation, this would be something where the buyer would have to be making up the balance between whatever's offered versus what is actually in the contract. So it's a little bit involved, not hard to figure out once you understand the process. The remainder part of these are just assignment to buyer, agency disclosures, fair housing. These are all additional aspects that go over in a different form. Then down here it goes through the arbitration aspects if there's anything that comes up either before or after the fact. And then it goes down and it lists the signage of the people that are originally up here at the top that are going to be the buyers. So I hope this is a little bit more informative, gives some insight upon how commissions work going forward from a buyer standpoint. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you in future videos.